turn off that waiting room.
Okay.
Welcome, welcome everyone. All right, we are just gonna wait for a couple more people to roll in and then we're gonna get this event kicked off. So glad you are all here. Monday morning, Austin Design Week.
Good morning.
Feel free to explore Zoom a little bit if you're not used to it. There is a chat. It's at the bottom, black bar at the bottom. You should be able to click that. You can type into that, so you can go ahead and let people know your name. Maybe if you're not from Austin, let us know where you're from. We're gonna start in about 30-ish seconds. All right. All right. Hi, Kathy. Okay, it is 10:32, so we're gonna go ahead and kick off this event. Nadia, if you want to go ahead and share that slide. So welcome everyone to Austin Design Week 2020, the first year of having everything be virtual like this, with a couple of actually socially distanced in-person events. My name is Kaylee, and I'm a part of the Austin Design Week team this year, and we're so glad to have everyone here. And as you experience different things throughout the week, here's our social links at the bottom of this slide. So please do tag Austin Design Week, share your experiences with everyone. And additionally, if you haven't already, there is a Slack workspace, and you can join that workspace and continue to connect with people post-event and, you know, carry on those conversations that may be started during each of the events. So please do that. Additionally, there are free events all week long. You can go to the next slide and we have a link for you there. And so if you haven't signed up for any other events this week or your schedule's not full yet, continue to go ahead and check those and sign up for those and attend other things as well. And lastly, we want to say a huge thanks to the sponsors of Austin Design Week this year. If you go to slide 3, Nadia, we have IBM, Matthews Potestio, probably said that wrong, Zebra, Marketing 360, Label Collective, and Frog. We're so thankful for them because they help make this event happen for everyone. And last thing I'll say before we really get going is that there will be a survey at the very end of the event, and you'll find a link for it in the chat. So we do ask you to please take that survey, let us know how the event went for you so we can continue to make it better. And next, I'm gonna pass the mic, so to speak, if you will, over to Nadia from Community Resilience Trust. And they have planned an awesome event. I'm very excited for it. And I will let you take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Kaylee. Hi, everyone. It's so lovely to see all 50 of you here. This is really exciting. My name is Nadia Barbeau, and we've got a group of us here from Community Resilience Trust. And we have prepared a workshop for us to work together to talk about education and especially equity in education. So I'm going to do we'll start with intros, and let me tell you about our agenda, and then we'll go into kind of the workshop portion. So after we do our intros, we're going to go through we have 2 community leaders, Kevin Michael Foster and Gloria Vera-Bedolla, and they're going to share some information with us about the inequities that have happened in the education space in Austin. Then we're going to go into a Hills activity led by our 3 design moderators, myself, Calvin Mays from the CRT design team, Nicholas Jayanty, who I think was jumping from another session, so I haven't seen him just join in yet, but I know he's on his way. And we're going to be using the activity within the IBM human-centered design thinking space called HILls. So if you're not familiar with that framework in the design space, that's what we're going to be using. So I'm really excited to be potentially introducing something brand new to all of you designers. And then we're going to do that together and break out into the breakout rooms using Zoom. And then we're going to come back together and play back those hills with our community members, Kevin and Gloria, to give us some real-time feedback because most of us, I'll speak for myself, I'm not an expert on the education space in Austin. The purpose of the playback is an opportunity for us to and feedback is for us to hear directly from people who are experts in that field. And then at the end, we'll talk about next steps. So I'm going to pause here. I wanted to just get everybody's brain like aware of the sections of this workshop, and I'll kind of come back for just a second to tell you a little bit about Community Resilience Trust. We are a collective of many different organizations in Austin who just got our 501c3 status approved over the weekend, I believe. So that we're really excited. And we've been, we have two co-founders, one of which is with us today, at least one of which is with us today. Janice Bookout and Ruben Cantu is our other co-founder. And they've been leaders in the Austin community for a long time. And they came together at the very beginning of the COVID pandemic saying, hey, we know that things are not going to be good in general because it's a pandemic and those are never good, but it's especially going to be inequitable in the things that happen. So we want to convene people together to try to have a response that is equitable to this pandemic, and we want the collective to live on longer. So that's what we've been doing for the past 8 months, and we've been meeting across about many different sectors, government sectors, nonprofit sector, education sector. And what we do, let me skip ahead here. I took just very short, we have done dozens of projects across the community since March. And I just wanted to show a few here. On the left, we created some infographics, and I guess I'll go into present mode so it's a little bit bigger. There's text here. So on the left, we created some sort of culturally relevant and translated into multiple languages infographics to empower the community with detailed information about how to protect ourselves. So that's just one example there. In the projects that we're doing in the community, some are research, some are direct service through all the different organizations. We're using text messaging, which is in certain communities much more effective than other types of digital communication. And then one of our studies that we're doing right now, we've been this picture of my house. We've been we've been talking to over 277 community members directly impacted by COVID-19 in our Latino study. And that has resulted in over $4,000 in interview participation compensation in the form of gift cards, digital or physical. So I took a little picture of that to share with you today. So we're doing many things. This is just an example, kind of a demo of a workshop. We've been doing multiple workshops like this in the community for these last 8 months. And boy, that took longer than I thought it did. Sorry, everyone. So let me have our co-presenters introduce themselves. Calvin.
That's a great job. Thanks, Nadia. I appreciate it. My name is Calvin Mays. I'm one of the design leads with Community Resilience Trust. I also manage a small design studio here in Austin called Cubicle with a Q. I am also a facilitator coach at Stanford's D School, and I also guest lecture here at UT with the School of Design from time to time.
I guess I didn't. There we go. I didn't introduce myself. Nadia Barbeau. I'm a product manager by trade, but I've been participating with Community Resilience Trust since March, and I'm really excited about all the opportunities that design frameworks offer and in software development and also in equity. So I've been really enjoying learning about this process these months. Nicholas.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever part of the world you're in. Hi, my name is Nicholas Jayanty. I am a design researcher at IBM. When the pandemic started, I think it was March 21st, I got a call from Ruben Cantu. Ruben and I went to UT together in film school and graduated, we were freshman film school students in 2000. And we've stayed in touch for a long time. And he called me on the 21st and was like, I want to test everybody in Austin. He's like, how are we going to make that happen? And I was like, I have no idea, but I'm in. Let's figure this out. He's like, I think a lot of people are going to get sick. I think that a lot of people are going to be underrepresented. And he's like, so how do we do that? And that kind of kicked off a rapid effort to build a team out and find great people. And so we find ourselves here today. Inside of IBM, I work on a cloud platform, figuring out how to make widgets faster. And outside of IBM, spent a lot of time thinking about how can we democratize the tools of design. Designers shouldn't live in an ivory tower. Designers are responsible to their communities. We're not an auteur industry where there's some person making a magnum opus like the film industry. We're really looking at how do we democratize our tools and give them to people so they can solve the problems that they're best suited to solve, right? We're not experts. We're here to facilitate for an experience, not create the experience. So I'm thrilled to be here today with you all and hopefully able to share some tools that we use to help do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Gloria, you're up next.
Good morning. My name is Gloria Vera-Bedolla. I don't consider myself an expert in education, but I have worked. It is my passion to see children become educated. So maybe that's the qualifier. I worked as a parent support specialist at Brook Elementary. I have stayed actively involved in fighting the school changes process, which really is the school closures plan. And that's what brings me here today to share with you.
Thank you, Gloria. Kevin Foster.
Hi, I am Kevin Foster. I am the incoming school board trustee representing North Austin, an educational anthropologist by training. That's who I am.
Thank you. Very excited to have you both with us. So I kind of skimmed over it at the beginning and I wanted to put a fine point on it. I think it's in our overview for this session. But when Calvin and Nicholas and I, together with Janice and Ruben, have been kind of forming the CRT design team, we've been really excited about the opportunities that design brings to solve big, complex challenges. But what we've found is that without some really, really intentional steps, design can make the same mistakes that we see in other sectors. And we really wanted CRT to not do that as much as possible. I mean, no one's perfect. You always make some mistakes. But what we have, we've try to focus on at CRT is introducing history and the lived experience of community members. We like to say experience owners instead of users. So that's a term that you might hear throughout today. So that's what we're going to start with. We've got Kevin first is going to start, and then Gloria is going to go second. And we're going to talk about the history and lived experience of education, public education primarily in the Austin area, and share some things that have gone well and not so well to set us up for the workshop portion itself. So I'm just going to leave this screen up, but because we don't have anything to share specifically, we're just going to listen. Maybe you can like zoom in and make your video a little bit bigger so you can listen to the speaker and focus on them. So I'll hand it off to you, Kevin. Is that all right?
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you, Nadia. And actually, maybe you could roll one back and leave it on the destruction in the name of progress screen, right? So I'll try to be brief, and this is a lot of material in a short period of time, but when invited into this conversation, and even as someone whose primary arena is education, it occurred to me that the history matters. Even the history that is not narrowly education history is going to be informative around this idea of design, and I would hope equity-driven design. So I want to walk you through just a couple of things relating to the Black population in Austin in specific, but we do well to imagine and remember that Austin was once a kind of Black-white space in terms of how it was imagined and how it was lived out, and then it became a tri-ethnic space, and then we moved forward from there where it's multi-ethnic with a absolutely minuscule Black population. So think of this history in terms of how equity and equity lens would have changed things. I'm going to point up 1865. I'm going to point up 1928. I'm going to point up 1971. And then I'm going to be queuing up or teeing up my friend Gloria, who knows a lot about some stuff that went down in 2019 that looks a whole lot like our past in unfortunate ways. So for folks new to Austin or folks that have been in Austin for a long time, we do well to recognize that although Austin is around 7-8% Black, it was once about 35% Black. Austinites, it was about 1 in 3. In 1865, following the Civil War, Travis County and Austin in particular were safer for folks generally than many areas of the state. So Black folk came to Austin seeking opportunity, seeking jobs, seeking safety. The immediate response by our city was one of fear bordering on panic. So that the mayor met in 1865 with the city council at the time and said, we've got a new problem of all these Negroes coming into town. What are we going to need to do? We need to create a police force. Now, we already had marshals. We already had folks in law enforcement. So this isn't the start of policing in Austin, but this is a major effort that kind of fuels the growth of policing. And so we see police force and the impetus behind policing, not unlike other communities around the nation, starting around the idea of controlling marginalized populations. One of the immediate following resolutions of the city council, which has unfortunate echoes today, was to control the vagrant population. So they were experiencing homelessness, specifically homelessness of the new Black population that was coming in. So they basically said, if you are idle, if you are not working, if you don't have a place to live, we can arrest you and fine you. the arrests and the subsequent fines would be exorbitant and end up fueling labor acquisition so that folks could rent out and effectively sort of pay off these folks' fines by renting them out. And those folks get to work doing things like, for instance, helping build the Texas Capitol. So you have an immigrant population and a Black population building up our Texas Capitol. So early on, you see these kind of decision by decisions of how we're proceeding. At that time, by around 1865, you've got Pleasant Hill, you've got Kinchinville, you've got Clarksville, you've got Masontown, you've got Red River Street, you've got Gregorytown. These are all Black townships, freedmen communities that exist all around Austin. Austin is different than many other municipalities in that we don't have the open racial terrorism to control Black people. Black people aren't being lynched at the rates of other places, but rather it's a sort of death by 1,000 policy cuts, where as we make land development plans, as we design eventually our swimming pools and our restaurants and our parks, we don't design for equity, we design to serve those in power. And the critical piece of my 8 minutes or however many, few minutes is to point out that when it has come to policy making and design, we look back in history and we go, oh, those evil people who in 1928 formally segregated the city by creating a Negro district. And we look at them with this gaze of malintent in their eyes. But you have to actually read, for instance, the 1928 city plan and look at the language. And the language says, in order to make things more efficient, in order to make things more effective, it doesn't make sense to have a Black pool and a white pool right next to each other. That's inefficient. So let's put a white pool here and then give the Black people a pool over there. Let's build a white school here and a Black school there. And we will build up the amenities and make them equal to what we are providing white people. It will attract Black people in. We promise it'll be great for everybody. That language is what is in the city plan and what is in the editorials in the papers and such. But what we imagine is folks all wearing Klan hoods with evil in their eyes saying, let's do this to the Black people. I say this to say that when we move forward through time and we plan, you still see echoes of that today, where we plan. And because we don't have, for instance, today, not Black people, but we don't have Mexican Americans, Hispanics, recent immigrants, folks with less, folks from diverse backgrounds, not having all those people at the table, we lose perspective. And over again, we design, whether it's conscious or I would argue often subconscious, we design from the perspective and values of those with power. And the result is systematic production of inequity. And then well-meaning folk, empowered folk, not understanding why the marginalized people are so angry. But we did this for you. Well, you did it for the people without inviting the people to the table. So all those freedmen communities I named, one by one got sort of picked off. Land development codes, city ordinances, where the city chooses to place a city dump. In the case of what is now West Campus, which was a Black township, they placed a city dump right in the middle of it and made it a sanitation nightmare. And so the death of that township almost became inevitable as the city kind of facilitated the creation of deplorable living conditions, which, by the way, then were blamed on the Black people for being dirty when the city had done this to them. So they didn't lynch the people, they didn't burn them out, rather they put a dump right in the middle of their community. This sort of thing happens over and over again. I don't want to take too much time. The article up there is called Destruction of Black Communities in the Name of Progress, and it's 1865 to 1928, so it's one little sliver. But it was the start of how Austin went from 1 in 3 Black to where we are now, which is, like I said, around 7 are 8%. And what I would argue to folks, and what I sincerely hope for, like coming onto the school board, is that we govern, we develop policy, we design equity forward, we design putting the marginalized voices at the table and sharing power equally. And thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. That was great. Thank you. Big task. So much appreciated. Okay, so let me go on to Gloria. I also wanted to take a minute I remembered that everyone, I'm going to share my screen while you're talking, Gloria. We're going to have Calvin and Nicholas. They've been working in the background while you were speaking, Kevin, taking kind of notes and making some design artifacts. So I'm going to start sharing a mural just so everyone can watch a little bit along. And Gloria, you'll be able to just speak without, you don't have to worry about what's going on in the background. You can tell your story to us just as you planned. Thank you.
Well, like I said, my name is Gloria Vera-Bedolla. I am a Latina that is passionate about caring for our children. And I took a job with Austin ISD about July of 2019 to be the parent support specialist at Brook Elementary. Brook is located at 4th and Tillery, just about, and well, actually 4th and Tillery. And I started that job after the former parent support specialist retired. She had been there over 20 years. So I had big shoes to fill. And I started the job, and on back to school night, we got a notification from Austin ISD headquarters saying that Brook was back on the chopping block. Brook was slated to be closed along with, I believe there's a list of 26 schools total. It's not a popular list, but the ones that were, one was affected, was very personal to me, was Brook Elementary. I started working there. I was really excited to work in the same place that my daughter would be going to school at as a kindergartner. And Brook, it's such a loss. What happened, the school changes plan has been coined a 21st century racism plan. And why is this? It's because the schools that were targeted are heavily Black and brown families. And as Trustee Kevin said before, we have 7 to 8% of Black people that make up the Austin, and still we keep making more victims out of them by taking away schools, by taking away programs that can help our communities. Brook was a green flag school. That's the highest award that you can get from National Wildlife Federation. We had programs like the Garden to Cafe program. We had recycling. Our kids were learning how to do recycling. We created a refuge for the monarchs where they can stop on their way and have a drink, have a rest in the gardens that we had at Brook. So many things that went away with the closure of the school. We were lacking in a lot of areas. When I started working there, the school was very divided, and I worked really hard to bring together our communities of color, especially because there was a big division because of the language barrier and because of assumptions. And so I got to work and I found an old shelf, and I asked the community for donations, and we've got secondhand clothes and shoes, shelf stable food. We put it on there, and it became the Brook Sharing Shelf. It was really exciting to me to make this shelf because it was a resource that was so needed by our families. Over 90% of the families there are low-income families. There's a fancier word for it, but basically it means people that live with poverty every single day. And the majority of those people are Black and brown people. And so I wanted to do my part to take some of the load off of our families and to provide relief of food insecurity, to provide a path where people felt comfortable to approach me and say, these are my needs. And I worked hard to get those needs. I brought a lot of programs in. I brought Austin Public Health in to do some studies, some testing, to teach people how to take better care of themselves. The Central Texas Food Bank, so many different programs, and it was going great. And then one night I couldn't sleep and I saw a commercial for a Whirlpool that was called the Care, what is it called? Care Counts, Whirlpool Care Counts. And I applied for it. I just thought, what if we get it? We probably won't, but I applied for it anyway. And we were awarded a brand new washer and dryer, a heavy duty washer and dryer, to eradicate kids not coming to school because they don't have access to clean clothes. That's a real thing. That's a real thing for some students. That some families don't have the disposable income of going to a laundromat or buying soap or having nice clothes. And so I always tried to place myself in their shoes and understand what their needs were and try to meet them. Everything was going great. And then, we're approaching Christmas. Capital Metro was a huge supporter. They gave us a gift for every single student from 1st through 5th grade. And then we had a group from UT, Future Doctors of America, that donated gifts for all our pre-K classes. And kindergarten was given gifts by Central Texas, Meals on Wheels of Central Texas. These were all beautiful things. We put together an awesome Valentine's Day dance. We had all these things going. We were donated 2 truckloads of food, and we were able to send all our kids home with a humongous bag of groceries for the Christmas break. And then we were all excited. We were counting down the days to spring break. And then coronavirus happened. And so, that closed the door on the school. But for us, it was a bigger loss because it closed those doors forever. There was no goodbye. So again, the Black and brown community suffered more trauma because we knew the school was going away at the end of the school year, but it was fast forwarded by coronavirus, by the lack of communication, and by bad decisions. And that's all I have to share today. It's very personal to me. I loved all 280 of our kids. I looked forward to seeing them in the hallways. It's amazing the energy and the life that children bring into a building. And it's a huge loss. And I hope that you become involved in Austin ISD in holding our trustees accountable for the things that we need. Somebody has to stand in the gap for our children that don't have a voice. They're little. They need people like us. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Just want to take a little pause there for all of us, digesting a lot of information, which may be really, really new for many of us. And thanks to Nicholas and Calvin for doing some of the design artifacts with a journey map and some empathy mapping there in the background. So we'll come back to that in this next portion, everyone. Okay, so now I'm gonna hand it over to you, Nicholas, to walk us through the workshop portion and kind of the teaching about the HILS framework itself. And then we'll be breaking out into our groups.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nadia. We can leave it here in terms of the slides. That's fine if you just want to advance them as opposed to like resharing. So if you want to hop to the next slide. So what we're going to do today is we've had an opportunity to conduct several workshops around the education space prior to this with members of Austin. And what we're going to do today is we're going to learn from those lived experiences, some of the things that we learned from Kevin and Gloria today, some of the other work that has been done in the past with other members of the Austin community around the education space. And we're going to imagine what success might look like to them based on what we've learned today. So we use hills to align our community. And ultimately, it helps us and allows us to be explicitly clear about what success could look like. And I think one of the most important things that Kevin said to us is that we can't design without the historical context. And if we refuse to hold the historical context in our minds as we design, we run the risk of actually creating more harm. Nothing terrifies me more than a group of well-intentioned people and designers that don't have the historical context. So I'm really grateful to Gloria and Kevin to share their lived experience with us today. If we can move to the next slide, we're going to get into the details, right? And so hills come from a methodology that we use at IBM. One of the most famous hills that we kind of point to is the idea of landing a man on the moon and returning them safely to Earth. The reason why we consider this such a good hill is because it's really clear who we're meeting or who we're serving, and really clear what success looks like, right? We're not just going to send them to the moon, we're going to bring this person back to the moon safely. So we're defining success in the terms of the astronaut that's about to be blasted into outer space. We can move forward to the next slide. To said differently, a hill is a human-centered statement of intent that our community can rally around. So we're all pulling in the same direction. Hills aren't written, they're constructed. And so what makes a good hill is that it's clear, it impacts our experience owner's pain point, it's compelling, meaning you could speak with a member of the community and say, this is what AISD or this is what the community is setting out to achieve. It's measurable, so we know what success looks like and we know when it's time to move on to the next goal. It's achievable, but it's not prescriptive. You know, we work with really amazing, talented people, both within the city, within the school districts, and within the parent and children's community. And so we work to not prescribe the solution. We work to articulate what success could look like and allow the really talented people that know their communities best how to translate that success into something that's actually achievable. We can move to the next one. So how do we build a hill? It starts up with who, what, and wow. So who are we impacting? What is the specific thing that a parent might be able to do? What is the specific thing that a student might be able to do if we're able to deliver this? And what's of value to them? What does success look like to a 6-year-old that recently learned that Brook Elementary was closed? What does success look like to a parent who recently learned about the idea that their school is closing and they need to address their child's learning experience, and they need to figure out, how do I make sure that my child is learning at a pace that they don't get locked out of the education system because the city of Austin has decided to defund the school? How do they make sure that they have other parents that they're working with? So how do we create a hill and articulate what success might look like for this parent? And if we can move to the next slide. Some things to watch out, right? For when you're doing this activity is stay away from fuzzy language, right? Easy to use, quickly, next generation, best in class. Those are all really hard to measure. And if we move to the next slide, really a good, here's an example that we wrote in advance, right? Which is an AISD parent is able to receive student and school district related communications in the language of their choice on the technology of their choice. So when AISD is communicating with parents, right, they're communicating in the language that they expect, in the technology that they expect. If we move forward to the next slide. A bad hill is create a Facebook group for parents and teachers to exchange information. I'd love a little bit of audience participation. Why isn't this a good hill?
It doesn't talk about why this information being exchanged is useful, for one.
Thank you. I see Kayla saying the who isn't specific. I think Austin Design Week is saying it's too prescriptive. This is wonderful. Thanks everyone for your input. Access is another reason why this hill is problematic. Rachel, do you want to unpack what access means a little bit more? Meaning access is not, people don't have access to Facebook, so it's clearly not focused on the user, or some of the users or experience owners that we're looking at. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And why might this be a bad hill?
It's not specific.
Okay.
It's not measurable.
Thank you. That's the one I was looking for. What is a successful outcome, and what does success look like to whom? That's a critical question that we're always asking whenever we write hills, is what does success look like to the experience owners that will ultimately be served by our city's systems and resources and services. So now we're going to move forward into our breakout sessions. And ultimately our hills align our efforts around solving the right problems for experience owner. So Nadia, if we could jump to the quick step-by-step slides. I think it's slide 31 or 29 or 28. Thanks. Awesome. Cool. So we're going to start off with this activity. The first thing we'll do is we'll brainstorm on some of the who's that we heard today. We've identified 2 different experience owners that everyone will be able to review when we move into our breakout groups. So for the purposes of this activity, we suggest starting with them. And if you have others that you'd like to think about, that's totally okay. We'll start with identifying the who's, then we'll move into brainstorming on what's. So what are some potential solutions that might address some of the pain points that our experience owners are creating or encountering? What are some of the solutions that we might address or create or identify to address some of the pain points that Gloria shared with us or that Kevin shared with us today? And then if we move to the next slide, then we'll brainstorm on whows, right? What success might look like based on the what's that we've identified. And then at the end, what we're going to do is we're going to play back some of the hills from our groups and get Gloria and Kevin's feedback from them. I mean, that's the most important thing, is what does success look like, right? But not how we define success, but how some of the people that are impacted by these pain points actually perceive success. So, you know, this is going to be a rough prototype that we're going to go to together. But I'm really excited for everyone to translate what they've learned today and then be able to share this back with Gloria and Kevin and just go through that whole loop of the process where we make something and get feedback from people that are representative of the people that are being impacted by these challenges. And yeah, so Nadia and Vicky, if we want to jump into our breakout groups, I think we got about 50-ish people. So that should be totally fine to work in that format. Thank you.
Yes, perfect. Vicky, can you tell us how it's going getting the breakout rooms set up?
Yeah, I am ready to click open the rooms whenever, and y'all don't have to do anything. You'll be automatically distributed into the rooms.
Thanks,
Yay.
Vicky.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you,
Okay, so
Vicky.
we're gonna have 3 groups. My group, Calvin's group, and Nicholas's group, and each of our our 2 speakers and Janice are going to be also in those 3 groups with us. And yeah, let's get started.
And probably about between 10 and 15 minutes, depending on how we're going. But I'll broadcast to let you guys know when you have a couple minutes to wrap up. All right, enjoy the conversation.
God, this time is brutal. We were right in the middle of a key sentence in our group, which is fine. It's fine.
That's how it always is. We have Ruben who joined us while y'all were away, in case Ruben wants to.
Hey. Hey, Ruben.
Hi, Nadia. Hi, T.
Hi.
Hey, Ruben.
Let's see.
So glad you're here.
Yeah. Okay, we have, I think, mostly everyone back now. Let me see. So I guess we'll go. Is Gloria, are you still here? I see Kevin. Yeah, there you are. Hey, Gloria. Okay, so, this is wildly fast. I just want to acknowledge that. Does anyone feel like you're sprinting and tripping a little bit? Because I do. That's what happens with these quick workshops where we're demoing a lot. I guess maybe we can go to the three groups, Calvin, Nicholas, and my group, and talk about some of the ideas that came out in your Short Hill discussion.
I can go. Just like you said, with the time constraint, we are. Am I sharing everything here? No, I'm not. Good.
Not yet.
All right. So with our group, we basically came up, and I don't need to share really. I just wanted to talk about it really quickly. One of the what's based on the who of administration. Our what was enabling admins to be more transparent. And the wow is as problems arise. And I think from there, we want to definitely start looking at the type of hill that we can produce. Maybe we can get an extra 5 to do that. If not possible, that's okay. We can always continue these workshops at another time if for those who are interested in doing so. But for our group, we really focus on enabling admins to be more transparent. And we have not developed a concept of how that might come about, but we definitely have a sense of urgency behind that. And then we want to do that as problems arise. But we have not.
I think that last sentence you broke up just a little bit. Could you say that again?
Sure. I was saying we had a few more ideas bubbling up, but we have not begun to bake yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same. Totally understand. So enabling admins to be more transparent. I love that. Maybe can we hear either Kevin or Gloria as a starter of an idea? Do you have any thoughts that you want to give to the team?
Not yet. I'm still sort of soaking it in. I do have some general thoughts, but I think I'd prefer to wait for a sec as more.
Yeah. Okay. No problem.
Well, one thing that I had brought up is that we don't have any clear communication, especially during the process, the school changes plan. There was no clear communication. What I shared was that there was times we attended probably 100 meetings trying to stop this closure. And so many times a handful of people would show up because it had not been communicated to the community or to the affected parties that there was going to be a meeting. Sometimes the printed papers that were flyers that were sent home with kids had the wrong address, the wrong time, the wrong dates. I don't know if this was done on purpose or not, but like I've said before, this is very near and dear to me. So it's hard for me to be, to say, oh, it wasn't done on purpose. But that was one of the things that I brought up that I think is very important.
May I add something?
Sure.
So effectively what I was getting at before the session or the breakout session ended was whether or not the action being taken needs to be reactive or proactive. when we, I guess, talk about our team's thinking, even though we didn't get to a wow, I think a fair one might be more of a roadmap, like a process roadmap, so that whoever is understanding or whoever is trying to be involved in getting their voices heard for this legislation can do so with more timely awareness, because it seems to me in Gloria's case that that wasn't the case, in that they were taking it upon themselves to source that information and source that power, and in the end it wasn't heard because they went ahead and with a process that was pulled out of nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for finishing that thought. In our group, to pile on what Izzy said, some of the qualities in our what, same sort of thing. We didn't get to a whole lot of like a complete hill, but some of the elements we were talking about is that the communication would be timely, trackable, and that there would be engagement between parties, the different groups here in the education landscape. So I think a roadmap is part of that tracking, Izzy. So that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Okay, Nicholas, I think you might have been having some technical difficulties. So I don't know if your team, how far you got, but I want to give you space, or anyone on your team, if you have a minute to share what your group came forward with. Oh, now you're muted.
I was having a little bit of technical difficulties right as we came from the breakout. Yeah, let me share may I share my screen? I don't know if I'm allowed to. The host needs to enable screen
Okay,
share.
try again.
Thank you. Awesome, cool. So our team was able to get through a series of what's and kind of get to the voting. And so the highest vote receivers, well, we looked at the who's, the people in the ecosystem, as well as some of the potential solutions that were identified. So the first, the experience owner that we thought would be most impacted by the idea of the school closing is a student with a learning disability or IED. The other experience owner that we thought was important to focus on was a student that attends a recently closed school. Parents who cannot afford childcare outside of school was also another highly impacted person based on our group's thinking. And so some of the solutions were around internet access while learning remotely, access to school support services, even if the school is not open. How do you fill in the gaps in the school services that this community was relying on? Guide to online learning for parents in preferred language. So not only, with parents and teachers now having to take on the role of IT tech support in addition to being educators and parents and all that, how do we get them the support they might need so that their students can remain educationally enfranchised? And then a sense of community while remote, right? What does that look like in this new landscape? How do students learn together? From the educational experts that we've heard from, in-person learning is much different than the remote learning experience. So there are positives and negatives to both, but one aspect of the learning journey is that it's communal. Meals while learning remotely, and then is able to access a consistent source of communication. So I don't want to put Kevin and Gloria on the spot, but as far as like what would success look like from an internet access while learning remotely, like what would be a wow to you two, based on your knowledge and based on what would actually really help this student with a learning disability or a parent who is struggling with childcare outside of school? What would be some of the wows for them by being able to have internet access while learning remotely? Does it bring up any thoughts to you?
So,
before we even go to wow, when you look at this vote and how it netted out, how did our biases come into play? I'm sure that we're bringing a lot of bias to the table. Do these votes align with your expectation?
So yes, sort of. And here's the ironic twist I'll throw into the mix. As we look towards equity, and so we identify students on with learning disabilities and students in this or that circumstance. What we left out are those who are more privileged. And I don't say that so that we could, again, privilege the privileged, but with their invisibility, what's not taken into account is the power of the privileged to disrupt equity if they don't feel continually privileged. So there's this deep ironic twist in this whole thing that folks have to be bought into this. And my belief is that folks are bought into a certain level until they feel that it's a zero-sum game towards them, or until they feel that they're not being served the way they want to be served, without realizing that they're asking for steak when other people are asking for just sustenance. But they're used to having steak. And so when they don't get steak, they're like, what's going on? So somehow in the process, you actually have to account for the privileged because of the ways they will respond and their effective pushback on any equity-driven plans.
That's fascinating. So by making privilege invisible, we talk about the idea of like detractors. They might even hurt the process, is what I'm hearing you say.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. Thank you, Kevin. Awesome. So Nadia, that's what we were able to come back with from our group.
Oh my gosh, what Amy said was on my mind when you were talking to Kevin. So I don't know if other people have heard that podcast, but it's covering exactly what you said, Kevin. So that's funny. Great. Yeah, I mean, we have, as we said, a short amount of time here. So does anyone else want to, I'm going to go over next what we typically do in a CRT project. Kind of, as I was saying at the beginning, this has been sort of a demo of what we've been doing in our group. And so now I can move on to telling you more about that. If this has been interesting to you and you want to be like, what could you possibly do with all this, but before I do that, is there anything else from the breakout that you wanted to share? Just something that, one of our speakers said that you want to highlight for us here today? I know that's a big question, but I just want to leave some space if somebody was, we forgot about this. So I think let me go back to sharing my screen and muting my Slack. Sorry for the dings. I love Slack though. Okay, so let me get back here. So we did. Boop. Okay. All right. So we kind of went around on our hills and a little bit of feedback there. So when we're doing projects with the Community Resilience Trust and the design team that Calvin and Nicholas and I are on, we answer kind of two key questions. Once we get to a point, like let's say we have our hills or we've created kind of, I know we all know a variety of different frameworks. We may have, cupcake, wedding cake, birthday cake, wedding cake. We may have a roadmap of potential prototype options for our stakeholders. And so what we do in CRT is we kind of ask two key questions. And we say, which groups are connected to this issue? They could be in any of these sectors that I've listed here: government, nonprofits, academics, and or companies or others. And then we think, what can we invite them to do? You know, we were talking about, you know, enabling admins to be more transparent, or the solutions, you know, the opportunities around internet access. I'm just picking like really basic things from before, but which groups in Austin touch those solutions? This is what we talk about all the time inside of Community Resilience Trust. And then we say, how can we invite them to, you know, partner with us, or how can we kind of call to them to say, hey, this is in your field of responsibility, or you know, budget, or things like that. How can we invite them to step into that based on the community's needs? And we've been doing this many places. We've done this in foundation equity. We've been doing this a lot through petitions with AISD and TEA related to reopening schools. We do this across many projects. We're in the middle of, like I was saying before, a large Latino community study. And we're right at the point where we're going to start asking these 2 questions after we've gotten all of our kind of data. And then we're going to use the leverage of the collective to make those things, to move those things forward. And so what we'd love is, you know, if this was interesting to you in all of its complexities and opportunities, we'd love for you to get involved with us. And so, you know, Calvin, Nicholas, Vicky wasn't featured here today except for helping us out with her Zoom skills, but she's an accomplished designer also. We have a good solid team that you can learn from if you're new to design. And also if you're, you know, you've done some design and now you're ready to start mentoring others, you can join us in that capacity as well, to offer coaching to others that are newer. And especially if you're ready to support the community more. Because we have many folks that are involved in our collective that we could be partnering with. The Latino Project has probably 10 different nonprofits and groups around town that are actively working with us every single week. And we're just really excited about you know, what we could do with that input that we've already gotten. We're doing the synthesis stage right now in the design process. So anyway, so here's the link. Can someone drop this link in the chat? If anyone hasn't, oh, there it is. Thank you. Thanks, Vicky. So yeah, so there's a little form there. You'll tell us a little bit, obviously your contact information, but a little bit about you is really helpful. You know, have you done community projects before? Are you a designer with a little bit of experience or not too much yet? All of that's totally okay. We're just really excited to kind of open up the opportunity here to folks to join us, because we have a lot of work to do. That is pretty much the presentation we have prepared and the event. Oh, wow, look at that, 10 more minutes. Maybe we could have talked a little bit more in the hills. Let me see if anyone has any questions for me about this last bit or about the form. I think I have the form on this tab here. Yeah, so you can just hit that if you have any, if you're interested in joining us. I'll just stop my share. Oh yeah, Ruben, did you come off mute? Intentionally?
Yeah, I was going to say thank you.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Does anyone have anything they want to ask or comment on for the workshop?
I actually had a question for Kevin off of what he said in response to one of the Hill exercises. In that I have always heard how designing for accessibility for underserved demographics is really designing for everyone. But I was wondering if you could point to a case where that hasn't been taken positively by the privileged.
It's a fantastic question, Izzy.
You just unbeknownst or beknownst, if that's a word, you just dove right into like some political stuff, right? So in Austin, we have LASA, the Liberal Arts and Sciences Academy, right? Now, there's those of us who believe that equity demands that it not be an apartheid kind of space that's like white and Asian, predominantly overwhelmingly privileged, and then everybody else somewhere else. And there's those of us who believe very strongly that all of our kids have the capacity to perform at that level if that's their interest. Moving the needle and opening up the school, even in the context of enlarging enrollment. So it's like we can take out the zero-sum game by saying we're going to enlarge enrollment. There are parents who say, what you're going to do is you're going to let in students who can't handle it, who aren't good enough, who aren't whatever, and my kids are going to suffer. So the introduction of equity around my privileged definition or Gloria's or other folks in the community who view our kids a certain way, we're not all starting from the same definitions of ability and who can be there. And so I would argue, no. I would more than argue, I know as a 30-year educational anthropologist that kids benefit from spaces of high academic achievement that are also diverse. Kids come out better when they are with a diversity of other kids. The kids get it right when we adults screw it up, like over and over. So we know of the benefits, and I know as a UT professor of the benefits of kids from diverse settings. But folks will say, no, not true. We need to keep these standards as such, and other kids can't handle it. So introducing more students who aren't like mine is a problem, and they will fight back. I don't know if did that answer?
Yeah, and I think, yeah, because actually, unbeknownst to you and all, I actually attended LASA. So I am very much aware of the dynamic and the tension that exists there. I haven't really been back to visit since, just because that's a place in my memory that is kind of, but in any case, I think that something to highlight in what you said was the starting place of the different demographics, because the students who attend LASA are at a place where they were given the opportunity to excel there, and it wasn't for the people of LBJ necessarily. So this is, I guess, a difficult problem to tackle because it's from the ground up. And I guess I'm just curious on learning more about local politics, because I think that is directly tied to any sort of design process and solution.
Nadia,
thank you.
Is it okay that I say something to this, or because I don't want to take up too much time? But
yeah, go right ahead.
So Izzy, first of all, right there is the principle at play. You were a student there who has direct experience. So who should we be listening to? Brother, we should be listening to you, all right? And you might say, so you've said some things that evidence that you kind of know what I'm talking about. And there might be other things that you didn't say about the experience. And so if we create a space that's safe enough for this voice to come in, the things I want to hear and like and co-sign, but also the things that are going to challenge me, and we incorporate both of those into our thinking as we move forward with solutions, then we'll be in a better space. My impression of all of the LASA graduates, like all the kids that I've met over the years, many of them will actually talk about a lot of pain, but they're also very conflicted because they experienced pain because they didn't just feel right about some of the stuff that was going on, but they also had a really rich academic experience, and they love some of their teachers and they love some of their friends. So both of those things are in their heads, and we did not set up a system for them to process it. So there's so much going on just in that one example, but the biggest principle is listen to more people. And in this case, it's listen to students.
Thank you.
Thank you both for that discussion, for sharing your story, Izzy, a bit of it. Janice, did you want to say a couple of things quickly about CRT?
Sure. I just, well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to the design team for your great work and for the conversation, for everybody's participation. You know, just reflecting back on what's happened today, you know, it's just a whiff, right, of what anti-racist design looks like. It's just the beginning of it, and you can see that. But you know, the purpose of CRT really is twofold, or our focus. It's addressing the inequities that get amplified during disasters in the short term, and then building our resilience as a community in the long term. Because disasters provide us with a unique opportunity to build that, to create that leverage. But because this is a collective effort, and you can really see it's a collective experience, where we prioritize Black and Latinx and our global majority voices first. We prioritize the lived experience first. We listen first. It's an emergent model, because what that looks like emerges as we build relationships, as we build the model. We're doing some things that haven't really been done before, especially this way, creating anti-racist, equity-focused design, creating a collective, you know, very diverse collective working strategically together, cross-sector. So I just want to let you know that this is an emergent model, and it's your participation is an opportunity to kind of get on the ground floor of an emergent model. But thank you for your participation, and again, thanks to the design team. It was really great.
Absolutely. Kaylee, do I hand it to you, or do we sign off?
Yeah, that's it. There's going to be a survey that's popped into the chat for all of you guys. Thank you for being here and for your participation. And thank you, Community Resilience Trust, for putting this together and bringing these voices to everyone. I hope to see all of you at some other events, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your time. Bye. Nice to meet you.
Good job.